Pfeiffer.
Good morning. How you doing, sir?
So I appreciate you doing this morning.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And I guess now that we have all three of you, we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm the Government Affairs Chair for Greater Tampa Realtors this year. And we've been trying to do some webinars for aspects of the community that are important to our business. Schools naturally are real important. I live in Central Tampa in Seminole Heights. And I've learned the importance of that because my customers, when they move in, they often move in without children. And then when they have children, they look to flee to other parts of the county. That's been my experience because they find that some of the school scores in other areas are better. So part of what I was hoping is, I know there's an issue coming up for adding some additional tax revenue for the schools. I know there's been some issues. I had not ever looked at the school budget until I saw the bio piece that Ms. Gray provided. And then I looked at the other counties in Hillsborough and I saw that, well, that's a big number, but it's a big number in all the counties. Mm-hmm. I came from a place where we had 15 school districts in our county. So I'm not from Florida, unlike maybe the rest of you. So since that vote is coming up today, we've got some questions about that. There's some other questions about school boundaries and stuff that people have had. So what I would like to ask you all to do, and you can divide it up however you want, to talk about where you see the school system as its goals for 2022. What do you see as critical issues that need to be addressed? And how do we get from here to there? And with that, I'm going to let you guys start.
So, Addison, you know, I can do the affective, Rick, and meaning what we are doing for our students and how we are helping our students learn, those kinds of things. And you know, I'll begin it in a very general sense, and then I'm sure Superintendent Davis will get into the particulars because he carries out what the board would like to have done. So if you go ahead and look at your notebook, and we were talking about school, how we always do our planning before the due date. If I'm looking at my notebook and I know that this is due so-and-so time, we are looking right now at facing a wide range of challenges. And speaking for the students, we're looking at the rise of human trafficking. We're looking at the rise, as these questions have come in from Jacob, of homeless. We're looking at the rise of not affordable housing, right? And where our teachers are going to stay and how can they afford to live in Tampa and serve. We're also looking at, Addison will speak about the boundaries. Should we shut some of these schools down because of low attendance? Do we need to shift the boundaries? You know, and politically, and I'm going through the questions, Jacob, we're looking at questions that just came up yesterday about textbooks. Are we teaching the critical race theory? And we're having to answer that. So, by the way, the answer is no, no, and no. But at any rate, there are things that we are forecasting that are growing and emerging to be real. We have to face certain challenges in an immediate sense. We are looking at the growth of charter schools and the ease that they're getting in to compete with our public schools. And so there's emerging situations coming that school board members, we have to deal with. I think we're done with the mask. The mask, I think we'll put that on some type of back burner. But the need for a quality education is quite great, and the need for quality teachers always remains a variable that we're trying our best to not only retain, but to recruit teachers. So board members have a lot of dependence now on our superintendent And our voters, he'll go into that millage. But what I want to say, and before Superintendent Davis speaks, I don't know if you know, Rick, because you're government affairs, you probably do, but you remember the total millage rate. We used to say this all the time. In 2008 was I think it was 7, let me see here, it was 7.4. And when we look at that millage rate through the years, 9 and 10, 11, 2022, here we are, it's actually decreased to 5.3. And that means the property taxes have decreased. And I thought that was very curious. You would hope that it would be maybe the same as 2008, but not lower. So I just wanted to throw that in. So with all that, I'm going to let Superintendent Davis talk, and then you guys, whenever you have a question for me about awards and all the other topics, just feel free. Is that okay, Rick?
Well, we are going to actually do the Q&A towards the end. So we're going to give you guys about a half hour's time or so to talk. And I've asked people to put the questions in the Q&A, and then we will go through them then.
Okay. All right. Superintendent Davis.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. And, for my side of it, we just talk about some of the successes that we've had to date, and then get to a point of where we are related to my ask tonight of the board, which is my decision as superintendent, is to ask for an additional millage increase to be able to further support the workforce that we have to create a sound, fundamentally sound educational system. So I'll talk about where we are from a state perspective with funding, and then transition to the overarching needs of the importance of it. With the understanding that it could be, it's a really complex time to ask, but it's a right time to ask for us.
So where are we going with the tax? I'm assuming that's going to go on the ballot.
That's what's going to the school board today.
Okay.
This evening, to ask to be able to transition to the BOCC.
Okay.
So, Rick, another way of looking at this in terms of who your position, Kristen's position, your mom, your friends, it's really, when we put it on the ballot, it's really up to the voters.
That's correct.
To decide what they feel, because we're information. Superintendent Davis will be doing town halls and all the other connectivity devices to get the public aware. And then it's up to all of us whether we vote for it or not. So that's the way that I'm looking at it.
Ms. Davis, do you have anything?
No, she's right.
In regards to that?
Well, probably for the millage, I'm probably not so much, but I've certainly have got lots, from session, if it's a different lane, but I was going to defer to kind of Lynn and Mr. Davis on as far as the millage and the discussion going before the board for this evening. I hope that's okay.
Kristen, you may want to share the ratings or the how the teachers in our in state of Florida are ranked, their pay ranked maybe 46th in the nation, and the per pupil funding might be. Is there some things that you might want to share?
I do. I'd love to. Rick, I don't want to, hijack or change, but no, absolutely, Lynn, I appreciate that. So, in terms of from our legislative session, the 2022 legislative session, you all know it was a very interesting and dynamic time. Speaking to what Ms. Gray was talking about in terms of teacher salary, last session, again this session, the governor and the leadership did prioritize getting the base pay for teachers up to $47,500. We do, within how the funding formula works for school districts, it's called the FEFP, the Florida Education Finance Program. And within it, there's a categorical for the teacher salary increase allocation. They funded it at $550 million, last year. And then this year they funded it at $800 million. So the $250 million increase for this session, what the language in the budget specified is that half of that $250 million must meet reaching the 47.5 for the base salary for teachers, and the other half is for our veteran teachers. And that's something the veteran teachers, the veteran employees, is something that Mr. Davis and our school board members, including Ms. Gray, really pushed with our legislators when they were in Tallahassee, just back in the end of January, early February. And then again, even last year through just correspondence, through phone calls, emails, and in person, just really pushing that we bump up the pay for all our employees. So also related to pay, I will mention that one of the priorities of the President of the Senate, Speaker, I'm sorry, that's Chris Bowles, for President of the Senate, his priority was to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which everybody on this call is, I believe, supportive of. I know Ms. Gray is, Superintendent Davis is. The thing about the constitutional amendment did require us to get there by 2026. The priority that came from the leadership in session basically expedited that for us, where we would have to meet the $15 minimum wage requirement by this October 1, 2022. We, of course, are in support of raising this pay for all our, our folks, our student nutrition service employees, our custodians, our bus drivers, all folks. But unfortunately, there wasn't a price tag, a funding formula associated with that. So how that does work, and I don't want to get into the weeds here too much, but we have to use our base student allocation. That's the flexible dollars we get to meet this requirement. So while there was an increase in the per student funding, the money will cover to meet this requirement by October 1 for the $15 an hour for the minimum wage. So I certainly, to Ms. Gray's point, wanted to touch on raising the teacher salary, especially for not only base, but for our veterans and for all employees. So I'll open it up back to you, Rick, or to Ms. Gray or
So
Addison.
the biggest thing that Ms. Davis spoke about is, you have to applaud that from Tallahassee being able to try to find additional funding to put on the early educator adopters, new teachers related to additional funding. That means that 1/3 of our teaching workforce has recognized close to a 6,000 to 7,000 increase in pay due to the fact of elevating new teacher salaries. The problem is 2/3 of our workforce have not realized that type of funding from Tallahassee, putting a lot of strength on school districts. So we have, 2/3 of our workforce, we've had to try to find funding to be able to properly compensate them so they feel valued within the organization. As you know, the last 2 years, we've had a chance to, we've discovered, some financial situations that were, that really strapped us financially, facing a $150 million general fund deficit. So we had to really work to figure out how to bring our finances back in line. And were forced, and I was forced as superintendent, to make some really difficult decisions, unpopular decisions, inclusive of making over 1,000 cuts, reorganizing the org structure in the school district in order to properly budget this, the $3.3 billion expenditure budget for our community. With this said, we have worked diligently to cut over 1,000 positions. We renegotiated contracts. And at the same token, we stopped overtime. We put organizational controls related to spending. And for the first time in a decade, we will close the school year in a positive manner financially and no longer have a financial deficit as we've had in the last 10 years. But all that to say is that we are having to try to find additional revenue streams to properly incentivize all of our employees within our school district, because surrounding counties, and we look at counties around the state of Florida, 21 counties in the state of Florida have additional revenue streams. And what they use those revenue streams for is to properly attract and recruit and retain a highly qualified, rich workforce. So for us in Hillsborough County, we've got to try to find a way to compete, because Pasco County, Polk County, those two are going out for additional revenue stream, but Pinellas, Manatee, and Sarasota all have additional revenue streams, which put proper money on seasoned educators to be able to allow them to compete and create the best educational experience for our students.
So, and I want to add to that, Rick, would you like for me to add to that, or would you?
Go ahead.
So, back to the board position and to relate to what Superintendent Davis said. So we also have to have the resources to fulfill what looks to be within probably 4 years, 50% of our student body will be Hispanic. That means translators, that means bilingual teachers, that means all the instructional materials must be in Spanish. There's a lot of a far reach that we need to do to make sure that the Hispanic population, which is throughout every community, has a quality education. Also, I don't know if maybe Jacob did go to the State of the Region. That's when all of your major regions, Orlando, Jacksonville, San Francisco, we compare how we're doing educationally, how we're doing transportation-wise, and healthcare. So in the terms of education, one of the parts that are not only our district, but other districts, inclusive is the university, is in the innovation. So what we're looking at is 3% in Florida that's the rate of patents. In other words, well, you know what a patent is. That's the work that starts something instrumentally eclectic. Opposing to that is San Francisco, that had 27% innovative patents. So what we're coming down to in our school system in Hillsborough County is, how can we prepare our students to be more innovative? And to that extent, we are increasing our STEM, actually I should say STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, throughout the middle school and the high school. And I think we have a new school coming too, the one in Waterset. So that I don't want to call it a wing, but a big emphasis is going to be on technology. That's near Apollo Beach. And that is also necessitating, because we're talking quality education, innovative education, not just basic. We want to make the best. And importantly, and this is from a grandmother point of view, our pre-K, and this came down from, I believe, a question from Jacob. Our pre-K, we know that if we don't get quality teachers in front of those children before they get to kindergarten, in other words, if they're not kindergarten ready, the chances of them being successful in third grade, which is where your testing begins, is very unlikely. So if the child comes up to kindergarten not reading ready, not numerically adjusted, not having social skills, that kind of thing, the chances of a successful student later to be an adult will be decided in third grade in many ways. And that's why that pre-K, we're adding 440 spots, but we need the monies to increase that. And last, never last, but I'll just say this is last for now. I don't know about you all, but 89%, let's see, our graduation rate is 88%, right? Well, we want to have a higher amount graduate than that. I mean, we want to go to 100%, right? That's how, when you and I grew up, I think I grew up at East Bay, which is in South County. I think there was only one student that didn't graduate. But at any rate, we want to have that as well. So that takes a lot of human resources and financial resources to gain ground on those areas. So that's my 2 cents at this point in time.
Well, and I would like to say you touched on technology, and 2 months ago we did a webinar with the Tampa Bay Economic Development Council. And one of the things they pointed out is just how many technology related businesses are relocating to the Bay Area. Yeah. So obviously having a prepared student population moving into the workforce is going to be really critical for us to hang on to those students and Antidotally, I'm going to wander off here because I'm from suburban Philly. Philly has the second highest concentration of colleges and universities outside of the Boston area. But Pennsylvania doesn't hold those students in Pennsylvania after they graduate.
Right.
Obviously, if we're going to have people here, this is the community I've lived in for 2/3 of my life now. We need schools that are going to produce people where they can find the jobs in their local community. And when you touched on the technology, that is certainly something that has become really critical. And we heard that in that last webinar that we had. And I've heard it in a couple other presentations this year. So that's an important part to discuss.
Absolutely. So one thing we got to do is meet our digital natives where they are. We have so many of our learners that have transitioned to our school district that are starving for, you know, an interactive project monitoring, project learning based education, and one that where they have the sophistication, the equipment, and the connectivity and platforms to be able to interact, you know, within our classrooms in a fun, engaging, high cognitive way. You know, coming in, we talk about technology. We only had 28,000 laptops that were functional when COVID hit, which was my first week. And we had to transition to, you know, closing all of our schools, and we just weren't prepared with 220,000 students. So not only have we increased the one-to-one initiative where, you know, we went from 6 devices to one student. We are now at a 2-to-1 from a device perspective, but we've also done a really good job making certain we have the right content, curriculum, software in front of our children so they can intellectually compete inside and outside of our classrooms. And also from technology standpoint, you know, from an infrastructure perspective, we're having to redo all the infrastructure within our schools, all the Wi-Fi connectivity within our schools as well, which is around 14,000 Wi-Fi connection points. But it's about workforce development for us as well, making certain that we are preparing students for jobs that do not exist today and preparing for Tampa's tomorrow. And you had seen recently that we have connected with launching a medical academy from 9 through 12, a medical academy for a technical college connected with HCC, and also a medical academy, and bringing in all of the business partners to identify equipment, curriculum, pathway transitions, so that our students can thrive and be connected to a workforce so they can stay locally. And this is about strengthening technical colleges for our adults, but also pathways for our students. And all this is aligned with local demands to help us with our economic development, especially working with the Economic Development Council and all of our post-secondary educational partnerships. And this will have a huge impact on our economy. We've identified jobs that within these, you know, technical assistant areas that are thriving with, you know, a starting point of $52,000 or above, and really having that direct impact to create that longer, stronger bitch, and also making technology infused in our classroom. That's it. Yesterday that we brought in 6 vendors and corporations, gave them an hour and a half each, and we asked them to present what does technology look like in our classrooms 5 to 10 years, you know, from now, and looking at visualization, looking at VRs, being able to bring that not only for an interactive from a STEAM science perspective, but also leveraging it from a professional development perspective as well, and being able to have cool state-of-the-art, you know, drone technologies within our classrooms to allow our students to compete in and out every single day.
So also, too, competing in the workforce, and I can see your audience is very much tuned into that workforce, because we will be supplying a great amount of trained apprentices, and all, not only just on the construction level, but also, as Superintendent Davis mentioned, on the higher level innovation and technology level. But one of the things too, Rick, a big thing that we're facing as a district, and putting on that school board hat, is when you visit schools, which we all do, the amount of time that teachers spend and our principals on the learning loss. It's a reality that COVID has made. Well, you remember 1 year, the first year, 2020, we had to go to computers, outside learning for the most part. But anyway, the amount of intellect, the academic progress has been shown to be very real in terms of not really growing academically. So we are having to put a lot of resources, our teachers as well are being trained to address how do we get these kids, catching up. In fact, I think Superintendent Davis will talk about what we're doing this summer, but that's a big deal. And not only the learning, the academic, it's the mental health. And we say that because, it sounds really trite at this point in time, but when students aren't emotionally, socially ready to learn, they will not learn. So we have had to put tremendous amount of emphasis on the mental health, the trauma support, teaching for teachers to be able to handle students that have gone through food insecurity, coming to school without being, the proper eyeglasses, without having, domestic violence at home. There's a lot going on in our classrooms that we also are facing. And this is not to be negative. It's just to be more reality focused. And that's what we're also, trying to mitigate. Perhaps Superintendent Davis will share what we're doing this summer on the learning loss. I think we're talking about today at the board meeting.
Yes, ma'am. So as we know, in the pandemic of the last 2 years, we really faced the realities, how student learning in the achievement gap has been exacerbated. So we've got to find proactive solutions, not only to help us while we have a time on task with our students, but with before, during, and after school, but also provide extended learning opportunities throughout the summer. We see that the gaps, especially between students of color, Black and brown students, have been exacerbated. We've got to find interventions to be able to help them along the way. So this summer we will be extending the learning process, and we will leverage ESSER funding to be able to expand for the first time ever in Hillsborough County to have a pre-K through 12th grade continuum of services, launching from course remediation, acceleration, booster accelerations for ELC classes, being able to have tutorials, professional development to professional learning, all to help our students with STEM camps, allow our children to be involved in host programs, to be able to not only to address the social emotional perspective, but the intellectual side of it, where we have math and literacy have a continued in science, a continuum of success, where we don't have any type of learning loss. We're going to recruit the best and the brightest teachers to be in front of our students during the summer because they need us the most. And we realize that literacy continues to be the foundation of all, with a really explicit foundational push to make certain that students are exposed to grade level content during the summer, and also being able to differentiate and scaffold instruction to allow them to lead to be successful. So, we have a continuum of services we will be providing, leveraging not district funding, federal funding they've given us to be able to accelerate learning, to have enrichment opportunities and acceleration opportunities so our students can feel and have success over the summer, which is very important to us.
Superintendent Davis, one of the things, because it's kind of like when I'm working with a customer on real estate, if I start using jargon, I lose people. So remember, I said I don't have kids in school. I'm not familiar with that. So when you're saying things like STEM, some of the people that are listening in may not understand what that is. That's talking jargon. It's talking your jargon.
That's perfect. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And that's what we have done a really good job. We're one of the only school districts in the state of Florida that offers this from kindergarten to 5th grade. And we have robotics programs, coding programs, allowing technology to be in front of our students. So it's a very good point, Rick. So these are just cool initiatives that we will be offering for our students so they can stay actively engaged in that process.
Yeah, and then we threw in the arts too, Rick. When we say STEAM, you might hear that. That's your science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And we also received 5 of our district, in Florida, only 5 districts received the Best Community for Music Award. In other words, we have a very robust arts program, and music is in our schools. So it's been, it's another great feather in our caps. We are huge advocates of the arts. Myself personally, I actually paint and I sew and I I do a lot of that myself. But at any rate, yeah, we have a great talent, and it's a great equalizer for our children. Everyone can be inventive and explorative, and the arts also, give those students a very equal playing field.
That's right.
to engage.
And I think one of the biggest things that makes us different from other school districts is in our summer, we're going to offer dual language success camps. We will offer, summer scholars program for students who are gifted or have that accelerated opportunity. We have migrant elementary summer learning in middle school as well. We'll have bridge to bioliteracy camps, and then also continued migrant school readiness summer learning, and then really target our VPK efforts. And we do bridge summer learning. That means that if any student moving from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school will have bridge camps just to get them organized to their particular school, so that on the first day they're not trying to find where to go from what particular class, how to be able to look at and leverage mentors, how to be involved in co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and at the same token being able to have student trajectory enhancement programs as well. And then also the STEAM, as we just talked about, rocket camps, just to get students actively engaged in that process.
And finally too, thanks Superintendent Davis, but when we talk about and this came from you all, from Jacob, what about the children that are homeless, the foster children, the migrant children? So, we offer them, for example, the homeless, we have a devoted, one person, her name's Laura Tucker, supplies those families, or not family, the children, the psychological resources, the actually at home or wherever they reside, gives them food supply, clothing. So we have a dedicated person just for the homeless in the foster care. We have children, friends of the children, and other partners that help us with the many children in foster care. I don't want to say Eckerd's right now because I'm not, I'm on the children's board, so we're not real happy with them. But also the migrant, we have over 2,000 migrants and growing. And we have a dedicated person, Carol Mayo, who also is giving them the educational communication, the resources, both food, clothing. She actually has sub buildings like those pods out in Seffner, Dover. So, we've got so many pockets of needy kids, and I won't even get into the transformation, the high needs children. There's in the urban core, but we also are handling those children who have, no one really to go home to, and that's happening as we speak. So, a lot going on.
When Ms. Gray speaks to this, we have a number of our students. I know one of the topics was homeless. In 2021, we had 3,900 students that were homeless and identified in Hillsborough County. Those are the ones that would identify themselves, with that label. We found ourselves today, as March 2022, that we have over 4,000 students that have identified themselves as homeless, as an increase of 84 from last year. But we've done a really good job making certain that we leverage our staff to have greater connectivity for social services related to make certain they have the essentials through housing, through clothing, childcare, healthcare, transportation. We have health services through dental to make certain that they have access and they can compete, physically along with intellectually within our schools. We have addressed food security by putting a number of food pantries within our schools to have easy accessibility and leveraging, Feeding Tampa Bay and other entities and partnering with the mayor's office. We have ongoing academic supports where we offer before, during, and after school interventions and supports for these students and their families. And then we also have technical supports where students who may not have devices, we provide the devices. We partnered with Hillsborough Education Foundation to identify connectivity with Wi-Fi hotspots. And then also we have ongoing mental health counseling, not only to develop the whole child, but also to develop the whole family, and ongoing attendance supports where we continue to leverage our social workers and our psychologists just to have greater connectivity so that students can feel valued and families can feel supported during the very hard time that we've had over the last 2 years. So we're continuing this effort. We started off the school year with 11,000 students that were not were age appropriate, not enrolled in our school district, and now we're down to 2,000 students. And that's just the hard work of our staff, finding students and getting them academically engaged along the way so they can have ongoing success in Hillsborough County.
I want to thank you. We're going to shift over to some questions, but this last part, I will say, actually, Roy touched on a lot of things that, at least to me, when I think back at school, was important, because I was one of those kids that needed to have somebody provide glasses. I spent half my childhood in foster care. I worked for DCF supervising child protective services. And I look back and I look at teachers that actually, some of those teachers made really strong impacts, and people don't always remember that. And people sometimes forget where they came from. But that's just my saying. I like the fact that you were touching on some of those. I know it's a challenge, but I want to get to a few of the questions that we've got in here. And I think we've got 6 or 7 in the questions, and some of them have already been answered. Some of them there may not be an answer to, but I'm going to put them out there for you. We have a question of, when will the county stop intercity busing? And why can't kids attend local schools versus being on a bus for 30 minutes? I think it's a valid question that sometimes we need to revisit.
Yes, sir. So this is something that that I inherited coming into the school district, where students are being bused and are currently being bused to different schools outside of openly the urban core, and to additional schools that are maybe particular top of the county, as someone identified as a 30-minute bus ride. What we've done is, me coming in, one thing that I initially started to look at is the schools that are under capacity. And I think the mentality of moving students from one location to the next was about having and creating a diverse educational environment. However, looking at the number of schools that we have, 60 schools that are under 70% capacity. We've asked for a company to come in. We've approved it to look at every one of our boundaries to make certain that we have, diverse populations, but at the same time, we're protecting the integrity of neighborhood schools. One thing we want to do is allow that study to take place, and that will allow us to determine whether or not we have to consolidate schools, whether or not we have to potentially reboundary schools, and openly, can we get students back into the neighborhood schools where they feel valued and they feel supported in that process. But I want to make certain that we're clear that, while we have a number of schools that are under capacity, if we can't just shut down that school, if we shut down the school, then those schools are able to go to charter schools, and the school district, which is district managed run, we would lose FTE for the students that elect to go there. So, when we look at the reboundary, we have to be able to determine whether or not, what's the causation of the under enrollment, and why do we feel the need that we need to push students out of their neighborhood schools, so that we can really tighten up, whether it be a school improvement process, a programmatic process, just to create excitement and have a thriving neighborhood school along the way. So that's the goal, to get back to it and to figure out proactive solutions to increase the enrollment rate at every one of our schools, and to reimagine potentially the pathways, educational pathways, so that we can have thriving schools. And we have some of our schools are in the urban core elementary schools that are under enrolled. So maybe looking at a different configuration of having and creating an early literacy center. They're really focused on 3-year-olds to 2nd grade. That could be kind of an example of what we would do and see and recognize within that study.
Yeah, and just, Rick, real quick, because you're not familiar with some of the acronyms. So FTE is full-time equivalent. And that means really cheeks in the seats. So that means every time we have students in the seat, there is an equivalent amount of money that we will gain. So that's because I remember.
No, I knew what that one was, but there may be people that didn't. And that's
Doing good. Thank you, Ms. Gray. That's the world I live every day.
We've got another, it's a bit longer question. It was directed to Ms. Gray, but I think it's probably something that all three of you could probably speak on. The county voters approved a sales tax last year for capital expenses, freeing up budgeted funds to use elsewhere. With inflation at a 40-year high, fuel prices, home values, meaning property tax collection, home insurance rates in some cases doubled or canceled as rents continue to increase, and it appears that the county will be asking to approve a new transportation tax. Is now the time to ask for another increase? Will the increase in pay to teachers even cover the tax increase and inflation? Now at 10% in Tampa. I'm not sure where that number came from, but that's the number in the question. Could the school think out of the box and tighten their belts just as families are being asked to now? Why is the handout so quick after the last approved tax?
So let me just get started on that one. It's a very good question because, we're at the worst time in history in our Tampa Bay region in terms of inflation. And we know that the property taxes, haven't been really raised in a while. However, the property insurance is in a state of flux. And this has been a totally bad time for that in terms of, the governor's going to face that. I think he's going to make something happen. Also, we're looking at affordable housing. We just don't have that for our population in many cases. We're also looking at gas. I think every spot of financial insecurity has been reached, along with the competing force upcoming transportation, which we all know we need to have better roads and remarkably more improved roadways. But at the same time, and this is from a board member point of view, and I also was an advocate of the referendum that we put together. We simply were running out of revenue streams, but we had to do something for the maintenance of our schools, the safety of our students, the learning environment, which is critical for students to learn. So, looking at the financials and then looking at what our school's condition was, and this was, I got on board in 2016, but 2018, we did pass that referendum. And I do believe the results are huge throughout the district. I think every one of those folks that are online right now know that schools are being renovated. They're being, we can't yet build new ones from that tax, but we have the air conditioning systems. Expensive maintenance is being afforded to those schools to have the equity. So urban schools are uplifted, not only with paint, plumbing, and as Superintendent Davis said, the infrastructure of computer technology, but also just looking at any danger. There were roofs that were sagging, plenty of reasons, right? Moving fast forward, and now we're not really asking, the board members are not asking, we're just putting this on the ballot for the public to determine. The person that's on the referendum really will be our superintendent and our CFO, who will have to give the rationale as to what the need is. He will be at the town hall meetings, and he will be speaking just like today to explain the many needs. Should we not put it on the ballot in August, which I believe is our plan, what happens to those voters who do want to support our teachers, who do want to support education, who do want to have the quality of music and arts and effective veteran teachers teaching their children? So I look at doesn't the public deserve that opportunity to vote, at least vote? And don't they deserve the opportunity, just like what you're doing, Rick and Jacob, to be educated as to what our schools, what is our district doing? How are we doing? What are we doing? And I think this is an opportunity for the public to really gain knowledge about the inside working of our school district. This is their choice. You know, they can say yes or no at the voting booth. But anyway, that's how I look at it. And that's a roundabout view of at least from my scope. So I'll let Superintendent Davis or Kristen.
Yes, ma'am. I'll jump in. Yes, ma'am. So thank you, Ms. Gray. And, first of all, thank the community in 2019 for being able to assist with a 0.5-cent penny tax, which has addressed the $1 billion of deferred maintenance. And all that has been successful through transparency of using those funding through the Oversight Committee. And we're thankful for Ms. Castor and Cronister and Mayor Lott, and other members who've been actively engaged in that process using it. And we can only use it on capital projects. But what we face today is inadequate funding daily for daily operations in our district, and also inadequate funding to properly incentivize our staff. And then also the same token, the insufficient funding to be able to allow our students to be actively involved in art, music, and PE, especially at the elementary level, and then also to be able to build a thriving workforce. The reality of pathways, the realities that we face in Florida is that we are ranked, Hillsborough County is ranked 45th among 67 Florida districts in the state per student funding. We understand that the inflation rate is significantly outpaced the increases in educational funding over the last 15 years. And we recognize it's probably since 2007, it's like a little bit over 32% of inflation nationally. And where in public education in Florida, we've only recognized in that same span close to 7% increase related to public funding. So there's a major gap there. And we've seen that 21 school districts throughout the state of Florida have gone out for additional revenue streams to build isolated salary schedules for their 4-year period to be able to properly show value and to properly compensate their staff. We talk about, with inflation, not only in the Tampa region, which I think in the last year it's been, close to 7%, 6.83%. We talk about the inflation that the school district has also incurred. Inflation means that we pay more for gas, we pay more for supplies, and at the same token, we don't get additional funding to pay more funding for our teachers and our support staff to keep them. Whereas Sarasota, Pinellas County, Miami-Dade, Orange County have all identified additional revenue streams to build a 4-year compensation package, which is the millage, to be able to show a immediate sense of care within the school district. And what we're asking is for not only for us to build and create the greatest workforce for our students, because education is the foundation of everything. And I get it. We may say that inflation overall will stifle individuals from coming, but what doesn't stifle newcomers from coming to the Tampa region is to have a premier school district. And we talk about tightening the belt. I've done that for 2 years. I've cut over 1,000 positions. I've renegotiated contracts north to around $8 to $10 million. I put organizational controls in where we no longer can just hire someone and not properly fund it. We've cut overtime. We've done everything we can to cut positions, but now we're at a part where if we don't find additional revenue streams and talk about equity across the state, then we come to a part where we may not have a workforce that allows us to do great things and special things for students. If we look at an article called The Great Resignation, we've identified 4,000 instructional vacancies in the state of Florida. That means 84,000 students aren't being served. And we in Hillsborough County, we realize over 400 instructional vacancies that we currently have today and over 500 support staff vacancies. So trying to find additional revenue streams, which we don't get that money from Tallahassee, to be able to help us with that process. And when we look at where we are from the overall millage in 2009, the millage rate was, I think it was close to, 5%, and the state regulates that. And now we realize we're at like a 3.5% millage rate. So if we increase it 1 mil, we're still at 4.5, and we're paying less than we did in 2009. And for me, it's important that elementary school students are exposed to art, music, and PE consistently within our schools, where kindergarten students don't have access because it's not properly funded. And at the same token, being able to create thriving workforce pathways that allow our students to continue to be successful. So when we talk about having, additional, a 4-year additional millage, we see districts, 21 districts across the state that have isolated salary step schedules that allow them to have that, realize that compensation, which is probably going to be around a 5.5% increase in pay, which is significant for a 4-year period of time, and allows them to show and pick us first in a sense of values. So we understand that, that inflation is, a part where we have to compete with. It may not be the greatest time, but we're recognizing a consumer price index increase as well. And we're having to fill that gap and not being properly funded from the state to be able to help incentivize and attract a workforce that allows us to be successful. So, we're going to be creative in this measure. And this is not the board, creating the ask. This is superintendent of schools, after everything that I've done for 2 years to put us back. And in the first time, as I said earlier, we will not be in a financial deficit because of the hard decisions that I have made over the last 2 years. It'll be me going to the board creating this ask, and allowing taxpayers to determine whether or not they will further support education. Listen, I wish that I could have access to a 0.5-cent penny tax, but it's only for capital outlay projects for infrastructure, which our facilities are aging, but our students deserve to have the best teacher. Our students deserve to have the best leader, the best support staff, and the robust educational experiences in an effort to be successful. So in the average, we're asking is $1 per day for the average property owner to be able to funnel back to help us with this process.
Superintendent Davis, I wanted to go to another question that's kind of related, and maybe this question gets to more clarification, because you've used a lot of references to additional funding streams. So are you referring to basically an increase in the millage rate for those funding streams in other communities? Or are you referring to it as a sales tax increase? Because the specific question is, you mentioned other counties are using additional revenue streams to make up funding deficits. What are those additional streams? What ideas do you have to adding more of these streams? So I'm seeing a millage rate as a potential stream. I'm seeing a property tax. Is there something else out there? I think that's what that person was getting at.
Yes, sir. It's a good question. No, sir. The additional revenue stream that I talked about, the 24 different counties in the state of Florida have asked for, is an increase in the millage. And their language is all to retain high qualified teachers, to be able to put additional resources in our classrooms. And I usually compare myself to Hillsborough County, to Orange County, Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and I add Pinellas in there. And those are the big five, inclusive of us, the big six through the state of Florida. And every one of those, except for Hillsborough County, has increased and asked for the community to increase the millage rate to be able to help with offset the financial expenditures and also to show value of our workforce. So from our side of it, that's where we are related to the ask. And not only do we talk about the 21 counties in the state of Florida that have passed it, there's 6 counties right now that will be moving forward in 2022 that's outside of Hillsborough County to be able to find additional revenue streams just to stay competitive.
Okay. I wanted to get in one more. I think we had a long question, it had like 5 parts to it, but I think one of them really hasn't been addressed. So I want to ask that specifically is, do you feel the millage increase will hurt affordable housing? Because of course that is an issue that we're having. And then I wanted to get to one last question. I think we will have used up our time today.
Yes, I mean,
go ahead.
We talk about affordable housing. We want to create these opportunities with the county. We want to create these opportunities with the city. But however, and it's just looking at revenue streams and looking at potential offerings or incentives that we can offer to our newcomers or those that are existing within our community and school district. The issue is that where do we get to a point where we don't address the continued fleeing of individuals in education at scale. And, they're forecasted to have over 9,000 instructional vacancies in the state of Florida by the end of the year, which is creeping up on us very fast. If we don't do something to show the value and appreciation of our employees with additional funding that's more attractive, then our schools and our classrooms are going to suffer. And I think the more that we continue to insert and put and allow voters to determine whether or not they are willing to go over and beyond to further help and understand that education is the foundation of everything, I think that will take care of itself related to bringing individuals into our school district. Affordable housing, I wish I had control over that. I do not, and I get, if we were additionally properly funded from Tallahassee, school districts wouldn't have to seek additional revenue streams. No one wants to be able to have to create this ask. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't create this ask if I didn't think it was a must within Hillsborough County for us to become, competitive in one of the top school districts in not only the state of Florida, but throughout this nation. And we talk about Tampa being the number 3 place to be able to move and to live in. It has to have a great school district. And me coming in, we had the most D&F schools in the state of Florida 2 years ago. And, and during the pandemic, I cut 28 D&F schools to 14. And the more that we put resources and interventions and have the right leaders and select the right curriculums within the school district, the more we'll have thriving school districts to be able to compete.
And I know we're cutting it really close. We might go a smidge over the 10:30 timeframe, but I wanted to end with this one question, which I think was a little bit more positive, and it kind of ties into just where you concluded your comment, Superintendent Davis. And that is, I appreciate your focus on preparing students for life outside of high school. If college is not an option or desire, it is important to ensure workforce housing, job readiness, financial literacy skills are obtained prior to graduation, while finding a way to connect students back to our local business community. How do we plan to accomplish this? Are there programs in place to ensure these skills are being provided or available to all students, such as collaborations with local businesses, interns, contracting, etc.? Kind of ending up on a little positive note, because I think that takes up our time.
Yeah, and you know what, Addison, you're perfect for this, because I mean, what you've done with turning around our vocational tech schools, absolutely. Go ahead, Superintendent Davis.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the celebration is that, we were recognized recently for having the most full-time equivalent students in the state of Florida involved into career industry certification classrooms and pathways. And that's because of the expansion of making certain that our students are exposed to career workforce development opportunities. My role and responsibility as superintendent is to make certain I create full option graduates. Ones that students that are ready to go to the workforce, students that are ready to go to the military, or they select post-secondary education. And for me, not to just pin our students into one of those particular categories, but also have stackable credentials so they can have exposure to multiple 2 or 3 or 3 of those pathways that leads them to be successful. For us, we do a really good job of having community engagement at every one of our high schools. We have CTE programs. As I said earlier, we're expanding a medical academy for 9 through 12, a medical academy for adult connectivity, and also a construction academy. And we have aeronautics, we have cybersecurity, we have medical science, we have HVAC, plumbing, you name it. We offer so much within Hillsborough County, where 55,000 of our students take advantage of our CTE coursework. And we talk about financial literacy. This is a must. We have got, our students don't understand what taxes are, how to write a check, how to register their funding. So the great thing is that this past legislation is that we have a required new financial literacy that every one of our high schoolers must take before they graduate. And I think that is a must. But I think we got to go deeper. I think there needs to be a life skills class where our students understand how to change the oil, how to change a tire, how to learn the soft skills, how to build a resume, how to speak one-on-one, get rid of these phones and really have a conversations where they can just become a better person and more charismatic to interact, where they can compete for these jobs inside and out. I think we've lost a lot of that through the technology that our students that grew up with, and as they are digital natives. We've got to get to a point where we have the basics, where they understand care for people, how to interact, how to shake a hand, and just how to be able to have the life skills to be successful. And leveraging, financial literacy, economics class to that process allows us to create students who are going to be thriving inside and outside of our communities.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Superintendent Davis, and Member Gray and Ms. Davis. I thank you for making yourselves available this morning. I know we can't get to all the questions. We'll be here another half hour or longer, and that would probably hurt us in the long run with the webinars. But I do appreciate the time that you put into this morning in helping to answer questions. If you've got anything in the way of handouts that can be sent over to Jacob for anybody that was participating to help them understand where some of those numbers are. Sometimes people respond best to audio visuals. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, there's one question that keeps on popping up. I really want to take 1 second if I can, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, sorry, it's the school recognition money. So, the board elected and, to protect our school district when we had a 24% positive rate in COVID. And historically the year before, we never went over 12 to 13% when we were protecting our school district. And sometimes you got to step out and be, civic leaders versus organizational leaders and support public health. And in that process, there is new legislation that takes school recognition funding away from school districts. And it's really not school districts. So Hillsborough County at the district level, we do not recognize these funds. The school recognition money is for any school that has maintained a school grade of an A or showed improvements or have a rating of commendable. And that's $9 million we were recognized last year. We didn't get that funding because it wasn't in the budget. So this year it is in the budget, and in 12 school districts across the state will not be eligible as of now through legislation because of implementing a 4-week mask mandate to protect our community. Please know that this does not hurt school districts because this money goes directly to schools, and that money goes directly as bonuses to teachers and support staff in the school. We are working with Tallahassee to see if that can be overturned. And at the same token, working with the Department of Education at the federal level to determine whether or not they will compensate teachers. So I just want to make certain that everyone knows that's not money that the districts doesn't have access to. It's money that individual schools who showed improvement do not have access to, and that we will continue to fight to try to bring that money. So we want to recognize those who've given best effort and hard work. I'm sorry, Mr. Rick.
That's fine. That's fine. I know it was a question, but I wasn't sure that was, germane to the whole district.
It's okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Otherwise, I would thank you all for making yourselves available today.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Have
All
a
right.
wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.